technically afternoon, so good afternoon to you all, and thank you once again for joining us here. We have before us the members of the Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in Eritrea, Ms. Sheila Keetharuth, who also serves as a special rapporteur, Mr. Mike Smith, the chairperson, and Victor Dankwa, who are going to speak with you in a moment. They have delivered their report to the Human Rights Council yesterday and concluded their discussion today, as did Ms. Keetharuth with her own report. The Commission of Inquiry, established in June 2014, presented their report. As I mentioned, it was a culmination of work that they've been undertaking since they were appointed in September last year. Mr. Smith is going to give some opening remarks, and then immediately over to you for your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Look, I don't need to say very much in opening. Our report, as you know, Sheila introduced just over 2 weeks ago. So you've had a chance to see that. You will have seen my statement. You will have seen the press release. Perhaps by way of opening, I'll just make one broad comment. There has been some accusations that this commission and this report is somehow politically biased, that there is some animus against Eritrea. I just want to say that we as a commission and individually have nothing but admiration for the country of Eritrea, a country that was born in considerable difficulty, some struggle for those people. We have a great deal of respect for the Eritrean people. We simply believe that they do not deserve the system that they've found themselves with. And in our report, what we have sought to identify are the range of abuses, systemic abuses that are happening in that country and which need to be addressed. Perhaps that's all I need to say at the opening, and I'm very happy to take questions, as are my colleagues.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, over to you for questions, please. Yes, Blaise.
Good morning, Blaise Lempen from ATS, Swiss News Agency. Will your mandate end now, or do you hope that the Commission will continue its work next year? Thank you. Yes, Blaise Lempen, ATS, Swiss News Agency. Do you think that your mandate will end now, or do you hope that your mandate will continue next week, next sessions? Or you see?
Thank you for the question. At this stage, our mandate is concluded. Well, strictly speaking, we are required to report to the Security Council on this report in October this year. So, but the substance of our mandate concludes more or less now. The issue of what further action is being taken is being discussed between the members of the Human Rights Council, and I wouldn't like to prejudge what's going to come out of that. We did leave in our recommendation several suggestions on areas that we thought the international community and the Human Rights Council might follow up on. These included in the relationship to the abuses that people suffer from people trafficking when they leave Eritrea, and for that matter other countries. This was beyond our mandate, but someone we believe ought to be looking at that. There was also an issue as to whether the extent of the sorts of abuses we identified actually comprise crimes against humanity. We were not able, we didn't have the time, the resources, the possibility to be able to make any sort of determination on that, and we simply recommended that some mechanism could be charged to look at that issue. Sorry about that. Yeah, it wasn't the Security Council; it was the General Assembly that we are due to report to in October this year.
Thank you. Further questions? Tom, Reuters.
Tom Miles from Reuters. There was a big rally here this week with the organisers said sort of 6,000 Eritreans, and it seemed to be basically their message was we don't like the COI. And I wonder, with what you know about the Eritrea, as you said, with this sort of vast spying network and its ability to call on supporters, I wonder how seriously you take this. I mean, the kind of things they were saying was that the people you spoke to, I mean, the messages I've heard, they can't be trusted because they're all seeking asylum. They're not actually, they haven't got asylum, so they're trying to make their case, so they're making it sound as bad as they possibly can. And lots of them are Ethiopians pretending to be Eritreans to make it sound worse. And I wonder generally if you feel that Eritrea now faces a choice between taking what you've said seriously and opening up, or risking further scrutiny and going down the path of denial and ICC. Is that where we're at basically now? Thanks.
In general, I would have said your question at the end, the answer is yes. We are at something of a choice here. We believe that there is an opportunity for the government to turn around, recognise the problems and issues that have been caused by the way in which the system has developed, address those sincerely, and the international community will be there to help them in that. If they do not do so, then they'll continue to face issues in engagement with the international community to the detriment of everyone, including particularly the people of Eritrea. In terms of the criticism that we were talking to asylum seekers who had a particular personal agenda in presenting a particular picture, we don't believe that to be the case, partly because many of the people we spoke to are secure in the place where they live now. They have their status is confirmed. They're working in the workforce in different countries, and yet their stories about what happened to them very much reflect what happened to those who are more recently have more recently left from Eritrea, and therefore are in a perhaps more vulnerable position. So we do not believe that that we have been duped by people sort of actually pretending that things happened to them that didn't happen. There were too much consistency in the way in which people were able to talk about their experiences. As I said today, every story is different, every story is personal, but the elements of the way in which they're treated, the way the system deals with them, are sufficiently common that we are absolutely convinced that what we describe is accurate. Do you want to add anything to this?
Just to follow up, I just wondered what you think about supposedly 6,000 Eritreans coming out of the woodwork in Europe to be angry with you. I mean, do you think that the government is able to call on these kind of resources, or do you think that's genuine expression of feeling?
I think that we found, one of the problems we found in going around is that people did feel quite intimidated in coming forward and talking to us. They felt that the system that they were describing inside the country had a reach which went even into countries of asylum. And they talked about, they gave examples of the way in which they faced pressure, even living in countries quite distant from the region. We gathered, therefore, that in fact the government is able to influence the communities quite a lot. The communities in the diaspora appear to be rather divided, and I think that that demonstration on Monday rather indicated that. But we do also think that the government is very active in the way in which it promotes that. The organisations such as the youth organisation of the ruling party, the National Union of Eritrean Women, which is another one, government organised, I think they're very active in the diaspora, and they rally people around for occasions such as Monday's demonstration.
Thank you. Yes, Nick, New York Times.
I know that you had no cooperation from the Eritrean authorities with your inquiry, but have you detected any reaction from them to the report, to the contents of the report since it came out?
Oh, absolutely. There have been statements that have come out, including quite detailed statements which have sought to discredit the report. There have been apparently Twitter tweets from senior people in the government. Apparently there are sort of pro-government websites where material has come on challenging the report. I would simply note to all of this that in almost all cases it's a matter of seeking to discredit our methodology, seeking to discredit our motives, and in almost no case that I can think of do they actually come up with contrary evidence. And by that I mean examples of, for example, officials who have overstepped the mark, who have abused people, who have tortured people to death, or who have sexually abused young trainees in the military or whatever. Just examples of people who have been brought before the courts and punished for that. We haven't had a single example of that. So in the light of these sorts of things, or even examples of people who've said they were charged with something, they were told what the charge was, they were brought before a court, they were given a lawyer to represent their interests, and at the end they were told their sentence. Almost never. None of the people that we met, most of whom have served some time in detention, actually ever received any of that information or had that experience. So in the absence of any contrary evidence introduced by the government, we stand by our conclusions.
Just to follow up, I wondered if there had been any hint of concern on their side to the extent that they had modified any practice or had attempted to shield any practice from further scrutiny, or had adjusted policy in any way. If there's been any hint.
I think that over the last year or two, we have seen, at least rhetorically, some changes, notably the announcement in 2014 that the National Service would be confined to 18 months. We also heard that there was going to be a new constitution drafted. Now those two questions, both very important issues, as I say, we've heard rhetorical suggestions this is happening, but we haven't seen anything practical or substantive in either case. And so in the absence of something that would indicate these were actually being implemented, we would have to say that there's been not much change. I don't know if Sheila wants to add anything. No?
Thank you.
Oh, that's right. We did also. There were promulgation in, I think, April or May of the criminal code.
All the codes.
All the codes have been promulgated. So they have updated laws, which again is a step forward, because at least people now know, well, if they can get a copy of the code, they know what the law is actually saying. But of course, that may well be as a result of international pressure. It may indicate that Sheila's work, the work of others, of civil society internationally, criticisms from countries, criticisms from the Human Rights Council have all had an impact. Let's hope that maybe that's the case. But of course, these are just straws in the wind. We've got to see a lot more than that before the situation really changes and people can feel or can live the sort of free lives that we would expect them to be able to live.
Thank you. I think we had Betul. Do you have a question? No? Okay, no. TASS News Agency.
No, it's not us actually. Elizabeth Sakov from a Russian news agency Россия сегодня. I want to ask, you stated in your report that there are crimes in Eritrea that may may constitute crimes against humanity. Do you think, do you recommend that these crimes should be discussed further in the International Criminal Court? Thank you.
Well, you'll see that in our recommendations, we actually recommend to the Human Rights Council that they refer this particular issue, which is investigate more comprehensively whether the sorts of abuses that we've identified constitute crimes against humanity. and we gave a couple of options for how they might do that. The idea would be, I guess, that whatever mechanism the Council chose would look at this, would come to a definitive conclusion, say, yes, we think there have been crimes against humanity. At that point, it would be up to the Security Council to take the matter up and refer the matter to the International Criminal Court. I don't believe the Human Rights Council by itself can do that, and certainly a Commission of Inquiry can't do that, or a Special Rapporteur.
Thank you. Yeah, sure, Nick, New York Times.
I mean, the system that your report describes seems to have almost sort of no parallel. The closest parallel might be North Korea. The report on North Korea produced quite exceptional measures to follow up that. I mean, you suggested some measures, but they don't seem to be very far-reaching to follow up. I mean, investigate crimes against humanity, sure. Do you not think that there is a case here, a very strong case, for some very exceptional measure, some mechanism to follow up this report? And are you going to push for that in your contacts with the General Assembly?
Well, I think that the difference between the DPRK Commission of Inquiry and our inquiry lie in the mandate. If you look at the mandate that was given to DPRK, it was specifically asked to investigate whether the crimes against international crimes or crimes against humanity had been committed. That element was not included in the mandate of our commission, and as to why that is, you'd have to go and ask the members of the Human Rights Council as to why they went that direction, but we were very conscious that we did not want to overstep our mandate, because that always weakens a report if it can be discredited because you've gone beyond what you've been asked to do. So we were very careful in the way in which we phrased that.
Thank you. Tom, Reuters.
Given the number of Eritreans fleeing the country at the moment, and the government's apparent unwillingness to ratify, if that's the right word, their own constitution and implement it, is there some sort of case to have a government in exile or some sort of external, body which is trying to say how Eritrea should be run, implementing, some of the suggestions that you've come up with? I mean, have you heard anything about that? Do you think that'd be constructive? Because if they can't run the country properly internally, then there has to be a question about whether somebody else could do the job better. And there's so many, I don't know how many Eritreans there are outside Eritrea now, but it must be, getting into the, well, I don't know if it's in the millions yet, but we must be getting up there.
Well, frankly, we're not going to step into that particular area. We make no comment on the political system beyond, or the political future of the country. We are simply pointing out the range of abuses that are occurring as a result of the system that operates there, and we're advocating that the government should make the necessary changes so this doesn't happen anymore. That's as far as we're prepared to go.
Sure, Nick.
Sorry, but your report points the finger directly at the president. I'm wondering if that's just a chain of command conclusion, or whether you have specific testimony that implicate him in specific offences and abuses.
Look, that's a very difficult one, because frankly, the vast majority of the people that we spoke to really don't know who it was who arrested them. Very often we would ask what authority did the person have, and they don't need any authority. They just turn up at the door, knock on the door. Sometimes they're wearing a uniform, take you away. They don't show a piece of paper. They don't even the officials who we interviewed, former officials, who would say that in their field they could just arrest anyone. They could drop them off at a prison and say, look after this person, put them in jail. They don't have to give an explanation of what they've done or who they are. They are just someone with authority. So in that sort of situation, it's very difficult to say how far up the chain those sorts of orders and directions go. And I think that one of the reasons why it's quite difficult, why we didn't even really get into the whole issue of trying to establish whether international crimes had occurred is simply that chain of command issue. It's very difficult to follow the chain all the way up or how far up.
If I may, I just would like to take the case of the G15, the political leaders, for example, who were arrested. Those who were at that level, it would definitely show that there must be some kind of direct link with orders given at the highest level to have people who have been who have had high political posts arrested. So that's the link that I make in terms of chain of command, etc. So if you were going to arrest people at that level, the order will need to come from the highest level.
Betul, please.
Betul, Turkish news agency. I'm wondering if you have the number of Eritreans who applied for asylum in 2014 in Europe. Thank you.
We have got a paper from UNHCR which gives some idea. I'm just looking for a consolidated number. It says by the end of 2014, the total Eritrean population of concern to UNHCR stood at 416,857. That included refugees, asylum seekers, IDPs, returnees, stateless persons, and others. I don't know if that's helpful. I think in terms of the increased number of asylum, the figure was at its highest, it was 48,400 new asylum applications registered during the year in Europe, I think, in the industrialized countries, which was more than double compared to 2013, where it was 22,300.
Do you also have the number of applications which have been approved?
Sorry?
The number of applications, asylum applications, which have been approved?
No, we don't have that.
Okay,
we don't have that figure.
Have you heard any allegations, or do you have any evidence of the Eritrean government or military being involved or complicit in people smuggling, people trafficking? Because I know there have been reports of that in the past, and obviously that would sound a bit contradictory if at the same time they have a shoot-to-kill policy to stop people leaving the country. But have you heard anything about that?
Do you want to take that one because of you?
Directly in terms of, I would rather go the way that some of the issues with regards to trafficking, how easy is it to cross the border, how is it, etc., to be able to move to another country, I would look at what are the ranges of those who may be involved. In the documents or in the testimonies that we were able to get, some of the, how does money go from Eritrea to elsewhere? I think there are different links which need to be explored further, which this Commission hasn't explored, hasn't had the opportunity to look at. But there are several questions which are out there which needs to be investigated further. The links between how the money, ransom money or paying money for people to move, moves from Eritrea elsewhere, and how that is done, I think is a good, une bonne piste. It's a way into this, this question.
Could I just follow up? I mean, do you, can you elaborate? I mean, can you say where the money is being paid from, and if we know anything about it, whose job it is to investigate this? Will you look further into this?
Where the money is being paid from, lots of it goes from Eritrea. How it is done is the question which needs further investigation, is what I was trying to explain. Lots of the people who are, who are either in elsewhere, as you know, we haven't addressed the trafficking issue, or where people, in that, because we didn't feel it was part of the mandate of the Commission. However, what we know is that the impact on the population inside, the country, where people have had to sell houses to gather money, etc. But how do they get it out is my big question. And this is where we need to look at things further.
Thank you. If there are no further questions? No? Okay, I'd like to thank our guests for being here, and obviously for you for coming as well. Thank you very much.